Hi and welcome. Today I'm going to show you how I do my vintage craft looking gift labels, gift tags. They look like this. This is one side and then the front here. These I'll use on my personal gifts, and I also make a bunch to put up in my Etsy shop, and I use a bunch of different patterns for that. How do you get the actual labels? You can buy pre-made craft labels, or any kind of label. They don't have to be craft. This is just what I happen to like for my kind of shabby chic look that I prefer. You can cut them out by hand into a shape that you like and just punch a hole in them using your hole punch. You can use a label punch. This one in particular doesn't happen to have the hole in it, so you could punch it with the hole punch after you've cut it out. This is what I use to make my my paper swatch books, or my paper swatch rings that I'll show to local customers to show the kind of cardstocks that I carry or that I can get. That's why I have this one. I apologize, that big crash that you just heard was one of the cats. Was frightened by the rabbit and jumped up on top of the rabbit cage. Okay, moving on. Oh, another way you can do them is to get an inexpensive die set that will pre-punch the labels. This one came from eBay, I think. The brand name was called Craft Design, and I haven't heard of them before. But the dies cut really well, and I think this was only $4 or $5 for the whole set. And they cut a stitch tag, which I like. But these ones, however, I made on my Cricut because I wanted to have it start cutting and do its thing while I wanted to do other stuff last night. So I took the very, very lazy way out. This is a cutting file. I believe I own this one on Cricut, and it actually cut 2 different layers of the label. So I use one label for the back, and then a slightly smaller one is the side that I'm going to stamp on the front, and that's I pre-taped these all ready to go today for my tutorial, and they just slip together like that, and you can see kind of the white outline just a little bit around. I will go and ink them to distress it a little bit, but I kind of like the white background. So those are the 2 components that went through this. So I had one that cut this, and then one that cut the plain craft paper. So for these particular ones, I have the 2 layers. You're going to need some sort of baker's twine or ribbon. I chose to use this jute twine, and I've had this in my stash so long I no longer remember where it came from. But jute twine is relatively easy to find. They probably have it in a bunch of different colors. I just have it in a burlap color and also this green. So you want to cut a good length of that off, and that's going to be your ribbon. Also for supplies, I'm going to be using my Vintage Photo Distress ink, and I have an ink blender. And I'm also going to use, for the stamping, I'm also going to use my Distress ink. I'm going to use the Distress Oxide ink in Lucky Clover. I really love how beautiful and bright that looks. I'm sorry, I've got a shadow behind me. How beautiful and bright that looks on the craft. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And what I use for my stamping, I'm going to use my Hampton Arts Stamp Perfect stamp positioner. I have this stamp that I think I picked up at the Target dollar spot last year, and I've carefully removed it from the wooden block. If I can help it, I don't like wooden blocks. I know some people prefer it. You don't need a stamp positioner. I've adhered the stamp into my stamp positioner for easy stamping. You don't need to do that. I'm a little bit spazzy and would not stamp straight, so I just kind of removed it from the block. I have some wooden stamps. I prefer not to keep them because they're a lot harder to store, so this will be a lot easier for me. And off camera, I'll carefully peel this sticker off and put it on a piece of acetate to store this, and then I will recycle the wood block or do something with that, another craft or whatnot. I'm also going to use my stamp chamois because I find it helps clean my stamps very well. For the paper, I'm using just some regular, I think this is 80-pound craft cardstock. And I'm using this old paper pad. This is 4 years old, this paper pad here, this holiday paper pad called Brown Paper Packages. I don't have a lot left, but I thought that the patterns in here would make for some nice tags. So I'll be going through and using the rest of this paper. I'll probably make some ephemera out of the cuttable tags here, but I'll be going through here and harvesting what I can. Beautiful paper. I absolutely love it. I used it for a couple of other projects this week so far. Okay, so once you have your shapes, again, I'm going to be using the two-layer tag, but you basically just need a shape with a hole. I want this to look a little bit distressed. So I'm going to take my vintage photo and I'm just going to distress the edges of both layers of my tags. This patterned paper here that I used has a white core. So I want to cover that white core, and I also want to distress the edges just a little bit. And this dries really fast. And I'm also going to distress the edges of the actual craft paper. Especially if you have, like I did, just kind of set your Cricut up to cut these and walk away and do something else for a few minutes and come back. It's really a very low labor intensive project. You could do a few hundred of them in an evening if you had a lot of tags to make. You could just sit in front of Netflix and just bang these out one by one. So there we go. I've distressed all of the edges on both. I'm going to put my cap on here so I don't let that dry out. I'm going to do my stamping before I tape these together. So I want just the cardstock craft paper, and I already pre-measured because I did the other tags yesterday. I've already pre-measured or pre-placed where this should go and have done my measurements and stuff, but I just tried to get it to aim for as centered as possible on the tag. I love stamping with Distress Oxide ink. It already kind of comes out pretty distressed looking, not perfect, and I really love that look, and I am just in love with how bright and beautiful this green is on this craft. And I'm going to press, and then that's it. I did quite a few of these last night in almost no time. Just boom, 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 they were done. Beautiful. Love this color. I'm just going to set this aside. It does take the oxide ink because it has some pigment ink in it as well. It's kind of a dye and pigment hybrid versus the regular Distress ink, which is a dye ink. It does take a little bit longer to dry, but I haven't really had any issues with smudging it. I'm just going to set these aside for just a moment and let that dry. I'm going to clean my stamp off real quick. Forgive my squeaking. I have noticed with this kind of lower quality kind of faux red rubber stamp from the Target dollar spot, and I'm not complaining. I mean, you get what you pay for. It's a really cute stamp. That it's a little bit harder to clean, and you kind of have to sort of squeeze the chamois in between some of the letters to get some of the ink out. I just clean as I go. That's the way I like to work. Clean as I go. Okay, I'm all done with this. That's it. I've already taken the liberty of, I put some regular score tape on the back of these tags yesterday just to kind of get it all prepared, but you could tape it, you could glue, you could use whatever kind of adhesive that you're comfortable with. I wanted to use the tape because I didn't want to wait for the glue to dry. I wanted to hurry up and get them laced up last night. I wanted to just be done with it, so I used my score tape. And then you just simply line the two pieces together. And again, the pattern paper is slightly larger than the regular craft. And I did that on purpose so that it would have a little bit of a white outline. And the trick that I do is I'm flipping it over and I'm just pressing it from the other side. That way my fingers aren't going on the ink. And that's all there is to it. Pretty distressed looking tag. And do the second one really quick here. I use my Cricut pick, which is supposed to be, I think, for weeding vinyl or whatnot, but I'm kind of using that to pull up the tape on my score tape here. I don't like to use my fingernails because look, it ruins my fingernail polish. My polish needs to be redone anyway. It's just kind of a habit at this point. Okay, and that's it. All right, now let me get the cap on the oxide ink here before that dries out. Now we just need to string it up. Really simple. I'm going to have extra string. I'm just going to fold the string in half approximately. Get the point where it meets. I'm going to run this loop through, pull it out the other side, take my tails, bring it up through the front, bring it through the loop, carefully pull it down. If you pull too hard, you'll rip the paper, so just be careful. And then that's it. And then once I get them all strung up, I'll make sure that all the strings are cut to a uniform length. But that is it. That is how I'm making my Christmas tags this year. It's really simple, but really pretty. I love the look of this sort of shabby chic, distressed, vintage, old-timey labels. That's it. I thank you for your very kind attention, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.